Hi everybody, my name's Krish Kandiah and I'm the founding director of a charity called Home for Good, which is a fostering and adoption charity here in the UK looking to find loving homes for all the children who are waiting for forever families. And I had the privilege of visiting Romania many years ago now, and I loved it. I love the mountains, I love the snow, I love visiting King Vlad the Impaler's palace. I love the food, but what I most enjoyed was meeting so many people passionate about providing loving homes for vulnerable children. I met so many adoptive parents who had just welcomed children into their lives, into their hearts, into their homes as their own flesh and blood. I was truly inspired, and it really helped me in my work in the UK to be able to shout the praises of all that you guys are doing. So it's a privilege to be with you. And I'm a big fan of Alex. So anything Alex asked me to do, I'm in. So it's a delight to come and address the ARFO conference. I don't know how you've been finding lockdown, but I found it quite challenging. I'm in a garage and I'm used to being out and about, traveling around the UK and often getting the chance to meet people from many different parts of the world at conferences and events. And now I'm in a garage, seeing the same four walls every day. I like to run, and in the morning I'll go for a little run. I'm the world's worst runner probably. I like to run early in the morning so nobody can see me except rabbits and squirrels that are in the woods. And I'm really rubbish at running, but I just try to get through. And by the time I get back, I'm a complete wreck. I'm lying on the floor, gasping for breath. And I wonder whether this kind of extended lockdown has felt like going on a run and coming home and collapsing and then being told, actually, you've got to run another massive lap. You've got to go out for the same length of run again. And this time it's going to be snowing and raining and it's dark and it's cold. And I don't know, it can be quite energy sapping. And so I wondered whether it might be helpful in this stage of the global pandemic to come back to purpose. Because I don't know about you, but lockdown and the global pandemic, it's disrupted many of my plans, but I don't want it to displace or dislodge my purpose. And so coming back to why we do what we do, I think will help us all gain fresh energy and fresh insight about moving forward. So that's my hope today. As we think about the fact that everybody can do something, I want to talk about why we do what we do. I remember a little boy who came to live with us, and he came to live with us in quite an abrupt and unusual way. It was 4:45 on a Friday afternoon, and the phone rings, and we can tell it's social services, and they tell us, oh, Krish and Miriam, we know you've already got 6 children that live in your house. We have 3 birth children and 3 fostered and adopted children. We know you've already got a lot of children that live with you, but could you take another one? And my wife's like, yeah, sure, no problem, let's do it. I'm the kind of skeptical one. I've got loads of questions. And I just say, well, just tell me something about this child before we welcome him in. And the lady on the phone says, well, we can't tell you much, but all we can tell you is he's a biter. And biter, that is just not what you want to hear, because what does he bite? Does he bite stuff? Well, we can cope with that. There's teeth marks on our furniture from our cat and other visitors. But if he bites people, well, that's going to be dangerous, isn't it? It's going to where's he been? What's he been exposed to? Is it safe for the rest of my family, my other children, if we welcome him in? And that's when the kind of the moral, the Christian, the part of my brain that reads the Bible, that's when that kind of kicks in. And I begin to have this internal conversation between the good side of my brain and the bad side of my brain. And it says, well, hang on, biter. That is an inadequate description of a human person, because you and I, we are more than the worst thing we've ever done and more than the worst thing that's ever been done to us. When God looks at us, if you're a Christian listening to this, when God looks at us, he sees men and women, boys and girls that are made in his image, and therefore they have intrinsic value, dignity, and worth. Every single human being on the planet has that dignity that comes from being made in the image of God. whether they're abled or disabled, whether they're looked after and living with another family, or they're living with their birth family, whether they're black or white or old or young or disabled or abled, whatever the descriptor you'll add to them, it doesn't matter in the eyes of God that they're all intrinsically worthy and full of value, dignity, and worth. And so you actually don't need to be a Christian to have that kind of value system. A friend of mine said, imagine you go to the bank and you get out £20, and you have one £10 note that's all pristine and perfect, and the other £10 note, well, it's all scrunched up, and it's probably been in the back pocket of someone's jeans when it's been through the washing machine. It's got writing all over it. Well, which of those £10 notes is worth more? Well, the obvious answer is they're both worth the same. They're both worth £10, no matter what their history, whatever the background. Value is baked in, built into what those notes are. And you don't have to be a Christian to see that and recognize that every human being has value, dignity, and worth. And so that conversation in my brain, well, it's the good side that wins. And we think, well, we've got to have this lad in our lives, you know. And in he came, and he was 3 years old, and he'd had 8 different families. He had speech delay. He couldn't communicate in the way that he wanted to. And so is it any wonder that he might bite just to let the world know that he's here? And he did come into our lives, and he did bite a lot of stuff, mainly sausages, which was completely fine. But because he'd had 8 different families, even though he's only 3 years old, he moved around all over the place. That kind of helped us understand his behaviors. We needed to hear his story in order to understand, provide a context for the behaviors that he exhibited. And that's important, isn't it? When you meet people who are just kind of behaving in a way that you can't quite understand, or you're looking after children who've come from difficult places, knowing their story helps us to be able to care for them better, listening to them. And it helps us to be able to put a framework where we can say, okay, I'm not going to dismiss you because of one behavior or one set of behaviors. I'm going to value you because you are full of value, dignity, and worth, but you've also got a story that brings you here. So this little boy came into our lives and he transformed it. It was just such a joy to have him in our lives. And he brought us, I'm sure, more joy and pleasure and excitement than maybe we even brought him. We thought we were doing good to him, but he ended up doing so much good to us. I can remember a time when I've been in the office and we had a whole bunch of internal politics going on and a whole bunch of external politics going on. People had been fighting over various, programs and ideas, and we couldn't get the government to do what we wanted to do. It was all very discouraging, and it made you lose hope a little bit. And I came home from that, and I just wanted to collapse onto a sofa, maybe watch a bit of TV, maybe eat some spicy crisps. That's my favorite, and just unwind. And this little boy, the one that couldn't speak when we first met him, well, he was now an expert negotiator. And he managed to convince me that today was the day he wanted to go to the park. And I didn't want to go, but he persuaded me. It was great. And off we went. And that was the day we took the stabilizers off of his bicycle, the training wheels, so that he only had 2 wheels. And he began to zoom all over the park. And maybe he zoomed so much because he couldn't stop, because if he stopped, he'd just kind of fall over. But he zoomed and zoomed and zoomed, and he shouted at the top of his voice, awesome, awesome, awesome. And there in the park, I'm having this moment and I'm reconnecting with my purpose. That, all that stuff that was going on in the office and all the kind of internal politics, well, it was all supposed to be about finding loving homes for children in need. And here was a child in need, and we'd made an impact in his life. We could see things changing for him. We could see joy emanating from him. And it just helped me understand that, okay, at one level, things are different. Things didn't go the way I wanted, but I had opportunity to show some care and attention to a boy here and now in my life. And maybe it didn't feel like much, but it showed me the power of love. That if you pour love and care and attention into these children's lives, it has such a big impact. And I wanted that experience that little boy buzzing around the park was having. I wanted every child to have it. And so it renewed my purpose. It helped me realize that maybe the small things I'm doing actually matter more, or at least as much as the big things we're attempting. And maybe you feel like that in lockdown. You had big plans, things that you were hoping to do, national strategies, global tours, policy reform, whatever it is, and you've not been able to do that. And it can be incredibly frustrating. But I bet you within the orbit of you and your family, there are people that could be blessed and helped and encouraged. And it could be the adopted children you look after. It could be your neighbours. It could be people within your community that you're allowed to see, even in lockdown. And the good that you can do them and the love that you can pour into them is actually good for them, but it's really good for you too, because it reconnects you to why we do what we do. To be honest, many of you have jobs or roles that they're hard. They expose you to some really difficult things. I was talking to a bunch of judges and lawyers, and no one really ought to enter law just as a way of making money. There are easier ways to make money than to be in law, because being in the law exposes you to all the darkest and most difficult aspects of human experience. I was speaking to some social workers, and again, there are easier ways to earn money than being a social worker. Being a social worker puts you into such a stressful environment where you're having to help children maybe be removed from some families and try and integrate into others, and often it leads to really difficult things. There are easier ways to earn money. Chances are you're not doing these jobs, or you didn't enter these jobs just to earn money or to make a name for yourself or to make impact. You did it because you wanted to make a difference into the most vulnerable children's lives. And so when you get to do that at a micro level, in your home, in your family, with your cousins or nephews, or wherever it is, it reconnects you with what really matters. And it will help the people in front of you, but it will help you recapture why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. I realized that day in the park that our family had made a difference to this little boy, the one that couldn't speak when he arrived. Now we couldn't stop him speaking. He was shouting, he was so full of joy. And it made us want more people to have that experience, more children to have that experience. It reminds me of an old story. You've probably heard it a million times, of a boy walking along a beach, and he sees like 1,000 starfish washed up and drying out in the sun. And unless they're going to get into the water, they're going to die. So the little boy picks up one of the starfish, and he's about to throw it into the water when someone stops him and says, "Why do you bother? It doesn't make a difference." And the little boy, who was very wise, he said, "Actually, it makes a difference to this one." And he throws the starfish in. And there is that idea, isn't there, that, okay, you might not be able to change the world, but you can change the world for one person and do what you can. That really matters. Everybody can do something for someone. But I wonder, in an age of social media, whether that little boy would get his phone out and take a picture maybe of 1,000 washed up starfish and post it on his Twitter account. There's my Twitter account. And put it on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever his favorite platform was, TikTok, and just show the world the need, and show himself throwing a starfish back in. Maybe that would inspire 1,000 people to come down to the beach and throw in a starfish, and so all of them could be helped. So what you do personally can have an impact on other people. I am slightly addicted to social media, so I'm often posting stories. I don't post pictures of my children because they're vulnerable, and it's not appropriate for the world to see where they live because of their history and their background. But I might be able to say, "Oh, we had a great day down at the beach today. It was such fun seeing the kids laughing as they jumped into the waves," and put a hashtag on the bottom, "I love fostering." And I'm just trying to normalize it to people that this stuff matters and it can bring great joy to the kids and to you. And by sharing our experiences of helping the one, we might be able to inspire other people to help the many, because every one of us can do something. So I just want to encourage you that you might feel that what you do is tiny and it doesn't matter. But there's a ripple effect, isn't there? What you do for the one, and you're able to share in your community or on social media, other people are inspired, and then more people can get involved, and then together we can make a difference to everybody that needs it. It's absolutely exciting. And as a Christian, I also believe that God looks at what we do, that in the Bible it says, in probably the verse that you all know really well if you know a Bible verse, it's James chapter 1 verse 27. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and blameless is to care for widows and orphans in their distress. In the end, Christianity is more than just singing or reading the Bible or going to church or giving some money away. It's about how your life is postured towards those that are in need. Is your life focused on looking after your own needs, or is it about preferencing and prioritizing the needs of others? Christians are just following in the footsteps of Jesus, aren't we? The one who laid down his life for the sins of the world in order that all of us could be adopted into God's family. When Jesus died on the cross, he dealt with all my sin and all the ways I've failed and all the ways that God should have rejected me. When Jesus died on the cross, he dealt with all that, paving the way for God to be able to welcome me and you and anyone who will believe into his family. And so if that's the way that Jesus lived, then those of us that call ourselves Christians, which literally just means little Christ, or people that walk in the way of Jesus, we want to orientate our lives towards the needs of other people and not our own. And so when you put first the needs of vulnerable children, you're doing something absolutely core to the Christian faith. But even if you're not a Christian here today, I want you to hear that what you are doing for the one, what might seem insignificant and small, really matters to God and really matters to those children. I just want to say I'm looking forward to the day when we'll be face to face again, maybe in the snows of Romania. But until then, I just want to leave you with one last story. I was helping to host something called the Global Children in Care Summit, and there's a website that you can go to and you can see some of the presentations. And one of the people that shared there so powerfully was a young lady called Ramona, who is from Romania. She may even be at this conference. And Ramona told the story, and you can see it on the website, of how she was abandoned to a hospital and then grew up in institutional care, kind of a form of the old Romanian orphanages. And there was a volunteer that used to come and visit, and please listen to Ramona tell you her story herself, but there was a volunteer to the orphanage that used to come and help. And it was a young woman that was training to be a social worker. And she ended up adopting Ramona. And Ramona tells it so beautifully, just the way that this young woman, went against the odds. She did it as a single person. She did it as a young woman. And she wasn't doing it because she couldn't have children. She was doing it because she really wanted to make a difference to this one little girl that she'd bonded with in the orphanage. And sadly, when children grow up in care, often they leave care having never really found a permanent loving family. And that means often those children, when they grow up and become adults, because they've never been parented, they find it very difficult to parent their own children. In the UK and many parts of the world, the children of people that leave care end up being removed from their parents because the parents don't have the skills or abilities to be able to care for them. And so what you see is a kind of generational impact. One generation after another is impacted by that failure in the care system, by that early trauma. And it can go on generation after generation after generation. And Ramona now, she spoke at this conference, she spoke so powerfully, it was beautiful. She did it while cradling a little baby, and I think she now has 4 children, and she's been married for many years. And for me, it was just so powerful to see the impact of that young adoptive mum has had, not just on Ramona, but on Ramona's children. And it will impact Ramona's children's children one day. You see, what we do for the one definitely helps them, and it definitely helps to build a ripple effect for now. For it could go global as people see what you're doing, but it also impacts history and it impacts the future. It shows these young people that they are loved and cared for, and it gives them a fighting chance of having relatively normal lives and normal families. And so generations will be blessed by what you do. So I want to just tell you, everybody can do something for someone. And what you do, however small it feels, can have a ripple effect that ripples through the world, but it can also have a ripple effect that ripples through history. So I just want to say, keep going. Fantastic what you're doing in Romania. It was amazing to have Alex and Ramona telling the world of all the fantastic things that you guys are doing. And I think together, as each one of us plays our part, we can impact the vulnerable children of our world for good. So I hope to see you again soon and have a fantastic rest of the conference. Thank you for listening.